hello and welcome. I hope everyone is safe and healthy, and I hope that you and your children and your dogs are ready for a great discussion today. I'm familiar with some of the people who are on the line today, but for those new folks, I'm Isaac Brown. I lead the Industrial Tech Group here at Landmark Ventures. Now, we have a lot of content that we want to cram into 30 minutes, so let's just get into it. We're here today to discuss business model innovation across industrial equipment and services. The key trend here is that OEMs and service providers are increasingly delivering advanced digital capabilities to their customers. Innovative providers are transitioning to as-a-service models for their products, but how can these first movers mitigate the risks of transformation while ensuring a positive return on investment for themselves and their customers? So let's discuss. We're going to go through a couple questions here today. Feel free at any point to submit questions via the Q&A box, and we'll save time for that at the end. And I want to start by introducing our panelists. We've got Josef Brunner, CEO for Relayer, and Stefano De Santo, the CEO at EcoSpray. Guys, maybe you could just briefly introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your companies, just 30 seconds each. Josef, you want to go first?
Well, I let Stefano go first. He is my partner and customer, so I want to be very polite here.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So my name is Stefano Di Santo, and I joined EcoSpray in early 2020. Actually, my first working day was the first day of lockdown, so I will never forget this thing. EcoSpray builds sustainable technology for the planet. In specific, we are the world leaders in the manufacturing of maritime gas exhaust cleaning systems, as well as we are pioneers of the biogas liquefaction and upgrade, and possibly disruptors in the fuel cell applications for maritime use. Prior to EcoSpray, I worked several years for a German group called Körber Group, where I served initially as CEO of a machinery division, Körber Tissue, dealing with tissue machinery. And then I was the founder and CEO of their Körber Digital Accelerator for the group that was based in Berlin. So my digital journey, let's say, started like almost 5 years ago. And honestly speaking, there's nothing more exciting than IoT, in my opinion.
Excellent.
You got me excited, Stefano. So my name is Joseph. I'm the CEO of Relayer. For those of you who don't know Relayer, we are a Internet of Things company, but that means everything and nothing. So what we do is we help customers to transform their business models. Like, Isaac just put it very eloquently, probably more eloquently than I could ever put it. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is provide technology that customers take to bring their machines to market differently, to really have an impact on their customers, to be more successful by, saving costs, taking risk away, transforming their business models from CapEx to OpEx, offer as a service models. The very core why we exist is we want to make our customers, more successful. We want to help them shape their own future and shape it successfully. And the way that we do this is not only through technology, but through a very strong focus on what the market needs, what's going on in the market in terms of market transformation, and then provide the right tools to make these customers successful. When I talk about tools, it's primarily technology because we're technologists at heart. But being a 5-year-old company, we got acquired by an insurance company a year ago. So you might ask yourself the question, why is an insurance company acquiring a technology company? It's because of tools, right? Because sometimes when you deploy technology, it makes sense to also add risk transfer capabilities, take risk away from your customers, or provide financing capacity. And that's why we feel extremely, we feel good being part of an insurance company, but still, to be perfectly honest, also feel good still being an independent company because we have a different culture. But maybe we talk about the things we do with our customers in a little bit more detail as we advance through the session here, but I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. So, we have a handful of questions to cover. And again, we've got a bunch of people in the audience. Feel free to submit questions at any point, and we'll try and cover as many as we can. I just want to start with the big picture question here, which is, broadly speaking, how are OEMs and service providers monetizing their value-added digital services? Who wants to jump on that one?
You take it, Joseph? Or I take it?
Oh, sure. Why don't we both take it, right? Well, maybe we have a different perspective. So I think that there is a change in the way that OEMs are monetizing the value that they bring to customers, right? So I think back in the day, you had a product, a machine, a ship, an asset, just name it, right? And you put a price on it, you sold it, and then you made money with services. I think there's a change now, and OEMs try to understand better, what's going on in a market, what is my customer really suffering from, and what capacity, capabilities, or solutions does my customer need to be more successful. And as they entertain that exercise, they realize not only what the customers need, but they realize what value they are unleashing, right? So if downtime is a problem, as an example, you got to ask yourself the question as an OEM, well, how big of a problem is that for my customer? Is it is it $10? Is it $100? Is it, possibly challenging the very existence of my customer? And then you know how to price it, and you derive the price from the value. And I think that's a totally different approach of pricing. And the main, there's a lot of different approaches to this, but I think fundamentally the biggest difference is alignment of interest, right? I think that's what I'm seeing. OEMs try to align their interests with their customers, and that goes through the offering as well as the pricing model. That's why you see more and more value-based pricing options in the market. So that would be my spontaneous reaction. I'm not sure if you want to add something, Stefano, if you see it differently.
I mean, I would subscribe to your vision, which is actually the dish of the day, subscribing. Okay. So if I have to I would say make it in 2 words, I think that at the end of the day, the only way to monetize digital services is to align goals and incentives with your customers as much as you possibly can, because everybody speaks about win-win situation. Everybody speaks about revenue sharing. It's not buzzwords. It's true. So digital evolution is a people's journey at the end of the day. So it's all about people. It's all about setting micro goals and having quick wins, because it's an evolution that depends on the alignment of goals. Most companies make the mistake to think about going digital full throttle ahead, which is not possible. You need to slow down, bake your strategy as much as you possibly can. And then, of course, you can create your team and go digital. There are several ways, as Joseph was saying, to, I would say, monetize. You can have a lot of metrics, availability-based, savings-based, output-based, time-critical based. In our business, since we work with ships, there is also location critical, because a factory is in the same position everywhere. A ship moves. So sometimes you can deliver value through digital services also because you give location critical answers. So globally, I think to finish off my I would say opinion on this point, I think that one of the great ways to monetize your digital services is to think about sticky business models. Sticky means you can put together several services. And what is very important, you don't have to limit yourself to the boundaries of your company. Sometimes you can also slot in some competitor of yours product, okay, and services, and vehiculate those services through your system and your offering. This is usually a click that in some people's mind is very difficult to make, because you think about the competition as, the big guillotine that chops everybody's head. No, sometimes you have to think about stickiness of the business through the alignment of the goals and, of course, the deep knowledge of your customer base.
No, those are good answers. And we see it kind of as a spectrum, right? There are some companies that don't even charge for these things, right? They consider it a competitive differentiator. There's some that just charge a little bit more for the machine or the service. There's some that try and sell it as a subscription. And then the more exciting things that I want to cover today, which Joseph alluded to, is value-based pricing, right? How much is a 2% increase in uptime worth to you? And I just want to share in that value creation. And then at the farthest end of the spectrum, the most exciting thing is transitioning to subscription models, right? Which is what we want to cover today. So there's kind of a spectrum, and it's industry specific, I think, in a lot of cases. But it's interesting to watch it play out. So one of the issues with trying to transition towards these new models is return on investment, right? Is how do we ensure that we create value? How do we ensure ROI, both for our customers and for ourselves, right? How do we make sure that we make more money while saving our customers money or helping them make more money? So how can these companies try and ensure ROI for themselves and their customers?
I can go first if it's okay with you, Joseph. So I think that I can respond to this in three main blocks. Okay, one first block is thinking about equipment as a service. Generally, like one size does not fit all. You cannot think about going fully fledged on your full portfolio from day one, giving everything as a service, because this will simply drown your company. Okay, you need to know your customers very well. So you have to select the customers that you want to go first with, choose to apply this system to a certain part of your portfolio, or possibly dedicate a share of turnover to equipment as a service approach or subscription models, because you can consider this thing as a product in your portfolio. So maybe dedicate a share of your full portfolio to this kind of approach. And that's, I think, the first point. So knowing exactly where you vehicle this thing. Then of course you can assure a good return on investment, in my opinion, through what I call the stickiness index. Okay, I use already this word because and the questions are very easy. So how do I participate in my customer's value creation? How many services can I connect? How can I stick to some other OEMs products and services? Okay, and this creates like a funnel where you have a lot of opportunities to stick new products and new services. And everything depends, and then I conclude my part. Everything depends on the digital readiness. Okay, digital readiness is a very important index that every company measures in its own way. But the thing is, you have to understand very well the type of business you're working in. Okay, the maturity of the business, the maturity of the competition. If you talk about customers, not every customer is ready to accept this model, but much depends on their CEO's commitment. So if you don't have the commitment of the CEO of your customer, the thing will never fly. And last but not least, you have to understand very well the digital exposure of your offering. Okay, what are the quick wins you can deliver? What are the micro goals you can set? And of course, how can you can accomplish with those goals? So I think everything depends on a deeper knowledge of your customer and a very strong strategy that depends on the digital readiness of the business and the stickiness that you can, of course, put together in your offering.
Yeah, Stefano, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. Maybe then I try to answer differently without disagreeing with you. So, we get a lot of requests from a lot of customers, right? They read about some of the successes that we have had with our customers, right? In a lot of different industries, from maritime that we have with Stefano, which is obviously the best project we ever did. But there's also other projects that we do, right? In machine tool, cutting, energy, elevator. I mean, just name it, right? So a lot of customers or companies approach us. Hey, I have this asset, this product. Can I offer this as a service? And the answer is, of course you can, but does it matter? And then the question is, the fundamental question to your answer, the fundamental answer to your question, Isaac, is, what problem are you trying to solve? I mean, that's what it starts with, right?
Pain point.
Pain point, right? And it doesn't matter if how you sell a product, if it's capex or opex. The only question that matters is, what kind of problem are you solving for your customer? And then it's typically inefficient markets that are most receptive to as a service models, because what as a service models do is they combine a lot of things, right? A asset, a product, just name it. But then there's risk transfer on top of it, and maybe material, and guarantees and financing. So you could say the more inefficient your market is, the more fragmented it is, the more value you can generate by having a vertically integrated offering, which essentially is an as a service model, right? So that's why I agree with everything Stefano said, but my fundamental question to start off with is, what problem are you solving? How relevant is it? How big is it? And only if the problem is big, only if you're really having an impact on your customers' daily life, P&L, just name it, then you will succeed.
But this actually was my point when I said you need to know your customers, because the pain point is a fundamental thing. It's a fundamental thing. And in my experience, sometimes you look at customers in the wrong way in the beginning, because you used to solve their problems by giving them stuff. Okay. when you go this kind of path, usually you go down this path and you don't have to think about what product shall I sell to this thing, is what problem shall I solve to this customer. But it's a journey because, I mean, it took decades to convince Rolls-Royce's customers to go power by the hour, okay? And this is something that sometimes you have to go again. So, but I fully support your vision. Pain point is all about this thing. Yeah.
And maybe to hijack Isaac's session here, just to respond again to what you said. You said something really, really interesting, right? Which is the pain point and how you sell it. And what you have to appreciate if you bring a service model or new subscription model to market, you as an OEM or you as the one bringing that to market, you won't sell to all of your customers that you have today the new offering. You will have customers who want to remain in the old world. They will say, I don't get it. I don't care, because you sell it differently, right? If you sell a subscription offering, you're not selling an asset with an asset value. What you do is you sell value, and you typically use financial metrics, ESG regulations, market transformation. So you sell it entirely differently. So what will happen is that your customer base will change over time. But that's important because markets change, right? And if you don't change with the market, or ideally if you're not, changing the market with that transformation yourself and shaping the market in a way that it's benefiting you and your customers, you will go away, right? So I think that is one additional topic I wanted to add to what you just said. And then you said something which I think is really, really true, which we at Relay did really bad in the beginning. And that is the domain expertise and the domain knowledge and understanding your customer. I'll give you a real quick example to not eat up too much time, but one of our first products was actually called Smart Manufacturing, right? We wanted to deploy it on the shop floor of our customers.
I remember that product. I remember.
Yeah. And there were a lot of mistakes with the product. There were two biggest mistakes. First of all, naming it Smart Manufacturing was a big mistake, because you're essentially telling the people on the shop floor they don't know what they're doing, because now you come in and software is making everything smart. Big mistake and fundamentally wrong, right? Because these people know exactly what they do. They know significantly better what to do than we would ever know. So, and then the second mistake we did is we built the product in isolation, right? We wanted to use AI to make it more efficient. Now, what you just said, I agree with you. You need a domain knowledge marriage. You need somebody who understands technology, that could be us, and you need somebody who understands the market, that's the customer, the OEM, and then you need to marry it. And only if you marry it and bring it to market together, you will have an impact and a real value add. And that was a big learning for me, to be perfectly frank. I did this wrong in the beginning.
I can share the same example with our first product we did at Corporate Digital. It was called Smart Factory, okay, again. And we tried to sell it using a lot of KPIs, a million numbers, okay? And at the end of the day, we sold the product to a huge tissue paper manufacturer in Germany, because the owner said, but with this product, can I just connect to my factory remotely and avoid going to the office every day, which is a pain in the stomach for me to do 100 kilometers back and forth? Yes, you can connect. And he said, I buy it. So we went through a million numbers. At the end of the day, his pain point was avoid traffic jams. So again, I think copy paste, same learning, okay? And then we changed the name of the product, luckily, okay?
So I want to run with this for a minute and then wrap up with one final question, and then we have some really good questions in the Q&A that I want to cover. I want to go back to this idea of solving problems, right? It makes me think of 6 years ago, I was working with a company that manufactured O-rings, right? It's part of a fluidic system. They spent, I can't imagine how much money in R&D developing a connected O-ring, right? And then they took it to market and they found out that all their customers had 5 other ways of figuring out if there was an issue with the O-ring, from sensors that were downstream and upstream for that. And then nobody bought it and they scrapped the product because they never tried to figure out whether anybody actually wanted to buy it, right, before they made it. And I think, so there's the technology side of this, and there's also the financial side of it, right? Like what problem does equipment as a service solve? Is it a cash problem? Is it, what kind of problem is it? So I guess if I want to go back to what you said, what problem does it solve? When you think about your technology and your approach to business model transformation, what problems are you solving for your
Well, the problem we solve for our customer is something that we don't necessarily always know from the get-go, right? So the reason why I love my job so much is that I have so many customers, right? And because the customers of my customers are my customers, right? So because we go to market through an OEM or through somebody who, whose customers we serve. So it's really, really imperatively important for us to understand, the person, the entity, the company at the very end of that value chain. What keeps that, why is that person staying up at night? What keeps you up at night? That's the fundamental question. And quite honestly, that comes back to my domain knowledge question. We simply don't know. I mean, how should we, right? I have no idea about the maritime industry, right? So I need a partner in the maritime industry who helps me understand this. And then then you jointly agree or disagree how big and how relevant the problem is. And that, then you talk about the solution. And then you realize, am I the right partner to bring that solution to market? Do I have the technology components it needs to, offer a pay-per-use model, uptime guarantees? Now you come into the technicalities, right? And that's the approach. And I think that's the right approach. What a lot of OEMs do, which I don't think is the perfect approach, is they have a bottom-up approach. They go like, I have this machine, and now I add digital capabilities to that machine, right? Like satellite capabilities, if you will. And what they do is, at some point, they forget that the world is changing, and the markets is changing, their customers are changing, and they might only need 10% of the capacity of a machine, or they might need something totally different to solve the problem of their customer. But they're so focused on their legacy, and their proud legacy, right? I totally and entirely get this, but that's the challenge if you start with what you have, with your example as one example, and then try to take it to market. And quite frankly, then it doesn't make any difference whether you take it to market digitally or in an old-fashioned way as a service, as CapEx. It doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, that's just a consumption model. Start with the problem. From the problem, derive the solution. From the solution, derive the prerequisites in terms of the technology architecture, and then only take what you need. Simplicity is your friend, not your foe.
Oh, yeah, I take this 100%, but most likely companies, especially if they're successful, there's nothing more difficult to change a successful company because they have a legacy, and especially if they build machines. And I mean, I'm coming from being Italian and having worked for a German company for a lot of time. So machine builders by definition, okay? And if you start hating the machine and actually looking at the problem, you actually have a lot of people in the company looking at you like, what are you talking about? Okay, the machine is our heart. And you say, no, the machine is something you deliver as a solution to a bigger goal, okay? You should be possibly technologically agnostic, meaning that you don't care. If you don't have the solution because you don't have the machine, this doesn't mean you can deliver the solution to the customer. But once again, this is a journey. This is a journey that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of dinners and gin and tonics to talk to your colleagues, because that's the point. That's the point. So sometimes you think about, I build something good and I try to sell what I have. Going digital means I take your point, I take your pain, and I find 10 solutions to get to the solution of this point. And then together we decided what is feasible, what is not. So I believe that the world moved on to the subscription model, not as a choice, but as a consequence. As a consequence of some further discussion, because possibly at the end of the day, the customer could have said, first, I have no money to pay for that. Or secondly, this is not my core business. My core business is a different thing. So you take away this problem from my desk, and I'll be always grateful to you guys. But this is not my core business. And that is what usually tended in the past to say, oh my goodness, I don't have the product for this thing, so I cannot sell anything to this guy. Wrong. I'm solving the problem. And the more I take away this pain from his desk, the more this customer is going to stick to me. And the higher the barrier is going to be for the others to jump in.
And Stefano, somebody will solve their problem, right? Because that's the beauty of living in the free market. Somebody sees an inefficiency and goes, there's an inefficiency, which means there's an opportunity, right? Yeah. And the interesting thing with the machine market and the machine tool market, specifically the Germans and the Italians, is they got rich, and I need to be very careful on how I phrase this now, but they got very successful by the fragmentation of their markets, right?
Yes.
And the low utilization of the machines. If your machine utilization is at 40% and your market is hugely inefficient, but still makes it and survives, you sell,
you buy a new
2.5.
one. You buy a new one.
And you sell 2.5 times more machines that the market really needs. Now somebody comes in with a vertically integrated offering saying, if I get to 90% utilization, right, I'm having half the price of everybody else in the market. And then you vertically integrate into that market. And then, as a matter of fact, you wake up the next morning as the OEM and go like, what just happened, right?
The market
and that is
gone.
the danger.
Yeah,
yeah, precisely.
Just to connect to what you just said, I mean, first you said you will find new customers. I can also add that you will also find new competitors, because your competitor of yesterday is not supposed to be the competitor of tomorrow. If you take a look at the Fortune 500 list of the 60s, okay, maybe 80% of those companies are gone, okay? So the competitors you're thinking about are always not the ones you had in the past. Maybe you will have new competitors, okay? I can bring, if you have 30 seconds, an example which actually hit me very directly, okay? I started off my career a million years ago, okay, as a young engineer. And I was working for a machine builder, of course, and that was making stuff for the car industry. And I had customers, I was product manager, so I was traveling to visit customers in the car industry. And I had the privilege to talk with the big guys. So when I went to Munich to talk to BMW, I talked to these guys. And if I happened to speak about Mercedes-Benz, okay, I couldn't mention their name. I had to call them the others. And when I went to Stuttgart to talk to Mercedes-Benz guys, I couldn't say BMW. I had to call them the others, okay? When I was living in Berlin in 2018, I got the big news on the newspaper that actually said that Car2Go, so sharing platform of Mercedes-Benz, actually merged with Drive Now belonging to BMW, creating Share Now. So they moved in 20 years from the others to being partners in the same company. But why did it happen? It happened because they realized that Google, Uber, and Tesla, they put themselves together. So they have the best technology, the best software, and the best knowledge of the customer that actually Uber has. So they realized that by doing man-to-man defense for decades, okay, they escaped the fact that somebody was digging a tunnel underneath their feet and actually going up 1 kilometer, turning out and say, "Auf Wiedersehen, guys. Okay, you talk about compliance, we sell the cars of the future. Ciao." So that is happened to me. And that is a striking example of how things have to change. I thought about how many board meetings they had to allow themselves to talk to the others before they could sit down and talk about business. But this is happening, guys.
No, this is great. Technically, we only have 2 more minutes, but I think we can run a few minutes over, and to anybody who has to drop because they have another meeting, we'll send out the recording afterwards. I want to be considerate to our guests who have submitted questions. So I'm looking through the Q&A here, and I have a couple that I want to cover. One that I like, just because it was a question that we were going to cover anyways, is what are your thoughts around risk mitigation with equipment as a service? How can manufacturers decide whether the risks are worth it? And I think given that we've got a lot of insurance involvement in the conversation today, I think there's a unique way to approach that. So who wants to talk about risk mitigation for business models?
I would love to. Right? I knew nothing about risk until getting acquired by the largest reinsurance company on the planet. And believe me, now I know way too much about risk and compliance. It's just, I learn a lot and have a lot of new scars on my back. But the interesting thing is what vertically integrated offerings do in a nutshell is they take away all of the pain points of the customer, and they go like, "Dear Mr. Customer, I give you capacity, right? Capacity to build tools, capacity to drive this many miles, whatever. You get a capacity from me, right? And all the risk associated that you normally have, which is downtime, supply chain risk, even to some extent market risk, which is pretty cool if you're perfectly honest. All of that risk I take away from you. The only thing you, Mr. Customer, have to do is bring utilization. I bring you capacity. You bring me utilization. And this is where the offering comes together and where everything marries. And this is where risk transfer capabilities play such an important role. I mean, they're priced, right? So you pay for it, but you don't have to deal with the risk anymore. The machine, from a financial perspective, will never shut down, right? It might not run, but you still make money because the risk is gone. The market might collapse, but you don't care because somebody else took the risk away from you. And that is why these risk transfer capabilities are so important. And also to a point that Stefano made earlier, in terms of changing customer landscape, that's why you see that a positive, aggressive customers resonate to this really, really well, because they go, I have zero capex, so you give me capacity. The only thing I have to do, I'm simplifying, is sell. That's all I have to do. So we see a lot of PE-powered companies that are going, give me the capacity, and I focus on what I'm best at, which is acquiring new customers and just sell. And that's, I think, a simplified but still very beautiful answer to the question, what does risk transfer? It allows you to do what you're really good at, and all the pain points, all the downsides, somebody else takes care of.
I fully agree with that. I try to give this answer from the OEM standpoint, or rather from the customer standpoint, so we can actually close the picture in a more accurate way. So for OEMs, there are several risks, of course. Going to subscription models, of course, you have a cash risk, of course, because you need to own the equipment, because that's something that you don't usually do. You just sell the equipment and it's gone. In this case, you need to own it. Sometimes you have asset management problems. Then you need some SPVs to be created to just allocate all the assets and to be managed properly. You also have to do a proper risk assessment, which is something that usually companies do not do, not in the way that you were mentioning before. That could be execution risk, market risk, or who bears the risk, because sometimes it's your supplier's fault, not only your fault. You also have a risk of payables, because if you sell something, you just get the money in one shot and that's done. Okay. In this specific case, you actually have to be paid for like 5 or 10 years every month. But usually when I speak about these things, always add one point of reflection, which is, what is the risk you're bearing if you don't do it? What you're risking if somebody else does it? So sometimes moving from ownership to subscription is an ancestral pain, because owning something is something that you're born with, okay? So you're born with ownership, you're born with possession, and this is difficult to change. But what you have to think about if you speak about risk is actually that what mitigates the risk in the highest way for OEM is that the equation $1 made with technology as a service does not equal $1 made in the transactional way. If you sell $1 through a technology as a service model, subscription model, call it the way you want, this is higher in value than a traditional dollar, okay? And this is actually what should drive your decisions. Because just to give you an overview, imagine your company with 30% of equipment as a service subscription contract in the portfolio in the COVID year. You would have had 30% of your money in your bank, even if you didn't sell a single machine. Because you have an equalizing factor of your turnover, depending on a different way of revenue, that would make your year completely different, simply because you had a component of your curve which is not depending on transactional relationship. So I think that risks are a lot and everywhere, but the risk of not doing it, in my opinion, is worth a try.
Right.
But sorry, talk about resilience. That's what you essentially said, right? With
Absolutely.
Subscription models and steady cash flow, your business, your cash flow is just more predictable and more resilient.
Yeah, you have less peaks and valleys, of course. You do not depend on buying cycles. You do not depend on seasonals, because most of the OEMs are seasonal businesses, okay? So the thing is, what you don't have, what is difficult to make in this period of time is a proper pipeline of your forecast, because it depends on customers' moods now that are very difficult to predict and to accommodate. So if you have a substantial part of your business depending on small yet recurring invoices, that will make your life a million times easier towards your people, your shareholders, and towards the customers themselves, because you can also say, no worries, we have a solution for that.
Yeah, Stefano, I agree. Your biggest risk is not doing anything, right? If you sell a compressor, right, it's a zero-sum game. One of your competitors is going to do it and steal your business. Maybe the company that services compressors is going to come up with the killer model that steals your aftermarket revenue. Maybe the owner and operator of that machine is going to figure out how to do it better and displace a lot of your aftermarket revenue, right? Somebody's going to do it, and you're going to lose.
One thing I want to add is this era, this phase, completely tore off all the normal walls of companies, okay? Usually companies, I repeat myself, but it's important. They thought about going exactly in the perimeter of their own portfolio, okay? What actually belonged to the competition was a million miles away. Today, this is not any longer like this, because if somebody is delivering a nice digital service, this will stick to your own business and take away your business. It goes for services, for spares. I can give you an example if you have time about what we are doing, which is proving to be very successful and goes completely beyond any type of protection given by the boundaries of your portfolio.
Yeah. Why don't we wrap with that? Give us this example, Stefano. I'd be interested to hear. And then
Yeah.
and we're over time. So
Absolutely. So the example is actually, we have done a thing. So as I said, I started on the very first day of lockdown, okay, in this new company. And this was a very difficult moment in time, because think about going to a company that actually had a business plan, some expected numbers, and you realize all of a sudden that nothing of that thing is going to happen, okay? Of course, 1 year ago, we didn't know the span of this pandemic, but we knew something big was happening. So we created a product that we called commissioning as a service, okay? And with a subtitle, COVID gives you wings, okay? Because we found ourselves in the position to have sold some equipment, okay? But we couldn't fly to go and commission the equipment. So we couldn't go and install physically. And that, of course, depends on the fact that the customer is going to give you penalties for that, because they stop a ship for a certain period of time. And this is money that they charge you for if you don't install the equipment. And nobody was ready to understand COVID, okay? The thing is, you're not coming, you're not getting paid, and you pay penalties. So we created a system that was, I would say, a digital service that was containing a software suite that was preventing the local technician of our customer, for example, from getting our IP. Because the thing is, if I send you my software, if I send you all of my stuff and my drawings, you get everything. 6 months later, you're going to take away the market from me, okay? So we created a system that was very well done to, I would say, secure the IP protection. So we had a technician on board that was not our technician. We could connect to that PLC, to that router, through a channel that we encrypted with blockchain. And we activated the software from remote. So the dynamic part of the software was actually managed from remote. The static part was actually there. We could not only connect the ship and make the ship run, but we could also have the flag approval, because our system need to be approved by an organism. And we could also have the flag approval done remotely. And this thing was super good, because the customers started to ask us to commission some competitor of ours machines with the same system. And this is the stickiness I was talking about, okay? So it's a small example of how we could turn an opportunity, unfortunately, given by the COVID, through a system where our competitors, they said, please use the same system to install my stuff. That is something, an example, but worked out.
And you managed to get blockchain in there. Congrats.
Yes, because that was actually done for the dynamic part of the software. That was the active IP of ours. Because if you send to, with all the given respect, a Chinese technician, your software, your coded software, okay, this, which is not open source, of course, time 1 month, this is reproduced onto every ship you can dream about at zero cost. Maybe you work 10 years for that software. So that is the difficult part. But the funny part is actually that the competition understood that it was easier for them to say, please use your system to install my stuff, rather than creating their own. And this is the typical kind. Maybe 10 years ago, we would have said, you, Mr. Competitor, go to hell. Now you pay your bills. And we said, why? Come on, this is not a victory of ours if they don't install, okay? we serve the market, and of course we start to be sticky for the customer. So maybe next time it's the customer asking us to use the system. That's what you create additional values.
No, that's great. And Joseph, I know we wanted to cover this earlier. Do you want to maybe just talk through one example of a customer case study and just kind of the full value stack for Relayer, and then we'll wrap after that?
Well, I can, but I don't want to highlight one customer specifically. I mean, what Stefano just talked about, I think is just brilliant, and it's also the approach that we're taking. I could name a few, but at the end of the day, right? So for us, the engagement is always trying to understand, the relevance of the problem, how we solve it. And I browsed through the chat a little bit, and I saw a lot of questions, in terms of differences between, pay-per use and paper capacity. And these are all super relevant questions. And I would like to invite everyone who has these questions to, find me on LinkedIn, and we can discuss those in more details. But at the end of the day, the paper use, paper capacity, paper stress, as an example, is something that we do, is just a consequence of the problem we're trying to solve. And in terms of, steady cash flow versus, ups and downs, these are financial modeling capabilities, which is another great asset we got through the Munich Re acquisition, right? And now we have all of these tools available to help our customers very holistically with technology, insurance, risk transfer, as well as financing capacity, to really bring to market a solution that even our healthiest customers, like we have one really great use case, which is Trump, one of the global market leader in the machine tool market, and they're very, very successful, have extremely steady cash flow. But let's say a machine costs $1.5 million in capex, and you take 200 of these machines to market in a OPEX model, you talk about a $300 million investment to get started. For a manufacturing company, that's quite an investment. But if you're part of a $20-30 billion dollar reinsurance company, that's where your investment becomes really attractive, because you can deploy a lot of cash. You can deploy cash that brings in steady returns on the very, very long term. And that's what excites me being in the position I'm in. So if there's any questions, find me on LinkedIn. Happy to have that discussion. And Stefano, I have to say, you greatly inspired me today. I think that we could go on for hours, and maybe this requires a sequel. I'm not sure. I leave this up to Isaac. Thanks for having me, Isaac.
Isaac is the boss. Okay. No, but I mean, I fully support what you're saying, and I'm just reading the questions that, of course, are popping up. Unfortunately, the sun is actually entering my window, and I have to move around. But I think that, once again, it goes the same for me. If you need anything, you can find me on LinkedIn. But globally, I see from the questions that there are all I can see as a red thread in the question list is actually that it's all about knowing your customer deeply, okay? Understanding the pain point. And believe me, the subscription model you can find, in my experience, is not the one you think about when you first visit the customer. You think about going there with a solution, and you realize that the pain point sits elsewhere, and you modify completely. But you can have at least 10 different ways to measure your success in a subscription model, okay? At least 10. The thing is, what is important is to understand that if you don't give the customer the feeling that, first of all, technology is not something relevant any longer. You went there to speak about technology. How fast was your machine? How quickly you could do the tool change? How fast you can modify the product that was manufactured? And this goes completely away. So discussions that were made about, okay, I need to buy 5 machines. And then you went there to discuss about 5 machines, and you realized that by using a different model, the customer only needs 3. But at the end of the day, you just tell the customer, I don't care how many machines you need. I give you those products, or I give you the uptime. So once again, I think that what's important to find, if I have to give a single advice, okay, to companies who want to go this path, the single advice is you need to find somebody, a counterpart in your customer's army who understands this concept. Without a sponsor in your customer, you will never make it. And the quicker you go to the CEO desk to explain about this concept, the better it is, because this is a change of paradigm, okay? People will be very reluctant to change because they think, come on, I am the boss of my machine. I am the boss of my department. I know everything, okay? Now you come here and you say, you take away the responsibility from me. It means that my department will shrink, that my responsibility will get smaller. So the thing is, find a sponsor inside your customer and take the CEO of your customer in this discussion, because it's something that is gonna touch his decision-making process. So this is my only advice. And then the solutions will come, but your guy and the CEO are fundamental in this process, at least from my experience.
Well, there it is. We're I think we should wrap. We're 16 minutes past. Great insights, guys. Stefano, Joseph, thank you so much for your time. To
Thank you, guys.
To the attendees who stayed on with us way past time, we appreciate it. We've got your questions here, and we'll respond to them. As Joseph and Stefano encouraged you, feel free to reach out to them on LinkedIn, or if you want to connect with me or them, and it's easier just to reply to me, send me an email. But we look forward to keeping in touch with everybody. We look forward to future sessions, and I hope everybody stays safe and sane. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. Can't promise I'm staying sane, but I tried to stay healthy. Bye.
Ciao, Joseph.
Have a good night, guys.